and I'm Bruce Rosard. I'm one of the co-founders of Arrival and obviously a co-host of this pretty cool vodcast that we've been doing for a while now. I want to first say hi to our third co-host, which is Lori Timoney, who's not able to make it today, but hope she's doing okay at home. And Christian Watts from Magpie. Introduce yourself and let's get it on.
Thanks, Bruce. Yeah, calling in today from Transylvania on the way to Focusrite. Yeah, I saw the Dracula Castle yesterday, which has nothing to do with Dracula. It's just a tourist thing that they call the Dracula Castle. Can you believe it?
Of course.
To sell more tickets to foreigners. Yeah. And it works. There was tour buses all over the place, but that's where it was yesterday. But we have Gilad Berenstein with us today. We see each other all over the place, Gilad, at all the trade shows and podcasts, and sometimes we talk about AI, but welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited for this.
Gilad, I met you, which I think you remember, at an e-travel summit 15 plus years ago. We'll put it this way, when you had to say e-travel summit.
Absolutely.
Which they still call it that, which is kind of funny. And you were demoing your brand new trip planning tool back then. So you take trip planning all the way back then. Come to find out a couple of years ago, I was actually using AI because my dad was a real early AI guy. But that's one thing you've done. You invest in companies, you advise a ton of companies, you're on the board of companies, and it runs a gamut. Tell us a little bit about maybe that very beginning with UTrip, but really, what are your hands in right now? Because you're very multifaceted.
Yeah, absolutely. So like you said, I grew up in Israel and my dad was an AI architect in the 90s. And I was a fortunate kid to be in the back of the living room to learn about AI a long time ago from my dad. And not just about the technology itself, but just as importantly about the philosophy that the best use of AI is to elevate human potential, human achievement, human creativity. And I still believe that very strongly today. Fast forwarding a whole bunch, in 2010, I took a trip to Europe and had all these thoughts about how AI and personalization could be used to make trip planning easy, enjoyable, and personal. And I came back, quit my job, and started a company called UTrip. And our goal was to become TripAdvisor 2.0. I thought 15 years ago the TripAdvisor was broken and lacked personalization. I still think that today. And we tried to do something about that. We spent a couple of years in direct to consumer, learned that we were good at data, good at product, and not good at driving traffic, which of course is a critical part of our industry, which is when we pivoted from B2C to B2B2C. And that's where I learned a lot of what I know. We were very fortunate to integrate AI into Hilton, into Marriott, into JetBlue, into American Express, into all of these important companies in our ecosystem. And we were often the first AI introduced. And if not the first, we were the first consumer-facing AI that was introduced into their ecosystem. So I was fortunate just to learn an immense amount from so many brilliant people across our industry. And then today I lead a venture fund. So the fund's called Brook Bay Capital. We are AI investors in the travel and hospitality ecosystem. And like you said, I sit on many boards and many advisory boards, which is something that I'm both proud of and really enjoy. And I spend a lot of time in conversations like these trying to think about how do we not make the same mistakes we made as an industry in the early 2000s to set us up for 20 years of being technology laggards, and how do we make some better decisions now so we can become innovators amongst industries again. So that's what I'm excited about.
Well, give us some examples of the industries you touch. Don't say AI, that's not allowed. That you are on boards of, advisors of, investors in, that you're involved in right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of like the mental model you can use to imagine my sphere, so I would say imagine 9 Venn diagrams, 9 circles overlapping with one another. In the middle, you have travel, tourism, and hospitality tech. Everything I do is technology, but travel, tourism, and hospitality. At top, you have retail tech, restaurant tech, entertainment tech. And on the bottom, we've got fintech, prop tech, and marketplaces. And the reason I think of this as one industry, I call it travel and lifestyle, is because it's the same set of dreams and aspirations in the mind of the consumer. And because it's the same data and the same mechanism we use to sell and to market for all those of us selling in this kind of travel, hospitality, lifestyle ecosystem. So that's how I think about it conceptually. In terms of some of my actual companies, I'm in Faye, the travel insurance company from Israel, Resort Pass based in New York, Mindtrip, Selfbook, NLX, which was a really cool early customer service company. We just exited to AWS about a month ago, Bonafide, and many others.
Cool. Awesome. Christian, any direct questions for?
Well, let's talk about the investment side of it. Maybe I want to come back to the trip planning though, because that's been that. I mean, I talked about trip planning a lot a couple of years ago when ChatGPT came out, and it was one of the obvious applications for trip planning. There was 100 companies that started immediately, and now there's maybe 1,000. I don't know how many have gone and how many have entered. But maybe let's start with investment. So how's that now? Because obviously there's on one side there's companies raising ridiculous amounts of money. Both the LLMs filed for IPO, right?
Yep.
In the last week or two, they're both $1 trillion each-ish. All these companies in San Francisco mainly raising hundreds of millions of dollars. And then on the other side of it, you could raise 50 grand and you could build an OTA in a weekend. So where does it sit? Who's doing what, and how do you sort of connect those dots?
And in travel specifically, and if possible, experiences, right?
Yeah.
Because we're not talking about $1 trillion valuations, right? So let's be
absolutely. So starting from the perspective of the investor, from the perspective of the investor, I think things have gotten really hard, especially for those of us doing venture investing in businesses we hope to get big in a relatively short period of time, right? So I'm sure all your audience know most ventures are investing in 5 to 10 year windows. We typically call it a 7-year window just to average that. So typically a venture fund is looking for a company that can get really big in 7 years. So first and foremost, that's gotten a lot harder because of both the rapid change of AI and the fact that we don't know what you're building today, if that's going to be differentiated and valuable for 3 weeks, for 3 months, or for 3 years. And it's really hard to invest because of that. And further, because of the eroding moats, right? Moats are barriers to entries that businesses build around themselves to protect themselves from competition. And it used to be that having a great team of high quality engineers was a moat, right? One of Expedia's first moats was that they had better engineers than Marriott or other travel companies in the space, and they could build these incredible things. And as I like to say, and this is really applicable to the experience sector, the disadvantage small businesses had compared to big businesses is largely gone away. I like to say that the number of engineers on your team or the number of PhDs you can afford to hire is no longer correlated with your ability to deploy high quality technology or to utilize data within your business. And of course, in the activity space, most of our providers are small and medium businesses who have few to no engineers on staff. And because of that, I think this is a really good time for them. But back to the core of the investment. So I think it's become harder for people like myself to cut checks, and especially in industries like travel, where we are using applications of AI, we're not building AI itself, it's really hard to know what's going to be lasting. Now, from the perspective of the startup, it is totally the market of the haves and have-nots. There are companies both in the AI realm, but also closer to home in the travel hospitality ecosystem that are raising great rounds at great valuations. I mean, I'm very excited. A few of my companies are going to announce some funding rounds over the next few weeks at really strong valuations, but it's still the haves and have-nots. A vast majority of the companies in our space are not only not closing rounds, but are not even being taken into serious due diligence considerations by most VCs. The difference, other than the hard differences of like, are there moats and things like that to protect you, is really a credible AI story. And I'm saying that not as a good thing, I'm saying that as a bad thing. At the end of the day, I don't like that a founder who could just tell a better story about why their system becomes a part of the AI infrastructure can raise, but that's it. The advice I have for founders out there is first, tell a story about why you were building for 5 years from now, not for 5 years ago. And make sure that your story doesn't feel like a story that investors have seen. And obviously we'll get into trip planning in a minute, but like there are so many repeated examples in travel. And as an investor, it's easy to just say, I've seen 10 of these, none of them have become huge. And thus I'm not going to take your pitch seriously either. So for founders, think a lot about how do you tell me a story about 5 years from now, not about 5 years ago? And then the other thing I'll say for founders is there's a lot of investors from outside of our sector who are desperately looking to invest in our sector. You know, a lot of people, including me, think of travel hospitality as AI proof. in a world of AI and robotics and whatever, we humans are going to want more human experiences, which include travel, hospitality, dining, entertainment, etc. So we're going to want more of those. So you can also go to investors outside our industry who maybe are a little bit ignorant of some of the companies that have failed before, and you might find some easier acceptance there.
So that brought up a few questions for me. First of all, I have found it very hard to find investors who are not travel industry investors that will spend money, that will invest in travel. Like that, over years of being involved with Techstars and seeing companies come in, it's just a real disconnect.
Yeah,
I have found. But I would ask both of you, so who is getting invested in right now? And yeah, let's name companies, even for the past year. Where is there any funding going into a travel tech startup that you're seeing that's significant? I have like one in my mind that I know about, but you guys are much closer to this. So who
No, totally. The past year has been really tough. The past year has been really tough for travel tech. I am optimistic, and obviously anyone who knows me in your audience knows they should take my comments with a grain of salt because I'm probably too optimistic. But I'm seeing a shift. Two-sided shift. One is the acceptance and adoption of technology by the conglomerates in travel is growing. This is one of the things that's bringing other investors into the space because they ultimately see that some of these startups are not just signing $25,000 contracts, they're signing much bigger contracts. And Mindtrip is a good example of that. There's lots of companies out there serving DMOs, and you see some of them just having significantly bigger contracts than others. I think there's technology, there's lots of things that play into that. But the willingness of travel companies to pay more to their tech providers makes the market, the TAM, bigger because there's more money coming into the ecosystem, which makes outside investors look at the ecosystem more. Plus the point I made a minute ago about AI, about hospitality being AI-proof industry. So you can see on the investment side, people like Andreessen Horowitz came to Focusrite for the very first time last year. And, with my podcast, Travel Tech Insider, they're now going to host some dinners, trying to connect with more founders and more kind of thought leaders in the travel space. You see Sequoia, you see all the large funds that historically maybe did Airbnb like 15 years ago and are claiming that they're travel investors, but we all know that they're really not. They're all getting active. So I do think the last 12 months have been tough. And I hope I'm right that we're going into a better time of funding.
But not even 12 months. So Christian, Gilad named Mindtrip, kind of the poster child right now of companies that have been able to get out there, raise money, do some big growth, get a lot of clients on the DMO side. Who else do you see, Christian? I mean, you're in this discussion every day that has actually raised money.
I mean, before ChatGPT, the money in our industry was a couple of OTAs and lots of res techs, right? There's a lot of res techs raised 5 to 10 million. And there was a handful that raised 100
Pete
or
raised
200.
70 or whatever. Yeah.
Well, 3 rounds of like 70-ish. So they're 200 and something. And then, but then since then, I mean, the res techs are not raising today or much. Mindtrip are great, but to be fair, they had a team that exited the last company for like, I don't know.
Yeah, they came from cred, right? Like when you have a few successful exits, it's a lot easier to raise money, right?
A lot easier. There was the company yesterday. I've forgotten the name. The Sonder founder, who
What's
raised.
Either of you know the name of that company?
Let me grab that.
Okay, so that's maybe one other than Mindtrip. And again, it's a founder who probably had a successful exit. I don't know if Sonder was a successful exit or not.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Sonder was not a successful exit. I don't think I'm breaking any news to anyone here that Sonder was not a successful exit.
Started this company.
The company's called Odessia, which I believe is the Greek goddess of travel or something like that. So that's the name.
Okay. And that's a new trip planning tool, which we'll talk about in a minute.
Absolutely. But again, I can't give names, but there are executives leaving Amazon. There are executives leaving Google. And this might be a good transition to trip planning, whether or not it's a good idea, there are very credible people with incredible track records that for good or bad reasons are starting travel startups. Some of these guys, again, will announce rounds over the coming months. One of the things I will say as a meta point is one difference now from 10 years ago. When companies raise money now, they keep it private for way longer. Like there's companies that like I know that raised money almost a year ago that still have not announced that. So there's also a little bit of lag in this kind of new era where because it's so easy to compete with no code and with all the new AI capabilities, the companies are actually delaying announcements. So there are companies that I know of, and I'm sure companies that none of us know about that have raised money that will announce at some point soon, including some new folks in our industry who are coming from elsewhere and discovered AI trip planning.
Yeah, right.
So you talk about remaining stealth. Is that the reason they're not announcing? They just they don't want the spotlight on them.
Exactly. They don't want the spotlight on them, and it sounds now like a lot of large conglomerates are willing to work with companies in stealth in a way that it wasn't before. Like when I signed Hilton and Marriott and all those guys, like we had to have dozens of hotels for many months on the platform to be able to prove things. It doesn't sound like that anymore. It sounds like Marriott and all the big guys are happy to work with companies, right, with the right founders and the right story, but who don't have a lot of track record.
So I get two other examples of companies. One that you both know that's not a trip planning tool, thankfully, which is Walkway. Right, their focus is on dynamic pricing for experiences, and they've raised about 1.6 million or so. So that's a significant round. It's not based on AI, although of course there's AI going on in the back end, but I don't think they're promoting themselves necessarily as like, we're an AI company.
Yeah.
But they're doing probably what I remember what Rich Barton said maybe 10 or 15 years ago. Rich Barton, the founder of Expedia, and then Zillow, and who's done a lot of stuff. He's like, if you're trying to pitch me something and you're not doing it as a mobile first company, I don't want to talk to you. Right. That was 10 or 15 or however many years ago. And I think that's what you're saying, Gilad, is if you're trying to pitch me something and it's not AI first, I don't want to talk to you.
Yeah. It's either AI first or there's a small percentage of business that can be anti-AI. Like it might be a tour company or something like that. So I think you either have to go and say, I'm anti-AI and this is why I think there's a market for that, or I'm building for an AI future when there are agents and all these things operating autonomously. It's like a lot of people are building for this middle layer, right? Like, so I just spoke with the Skift AI thing last week in New York or 2 weeks ago, whenever that was. And we were asked an interesting question about the vintage of startups that were born in 23 and 24. And I feel bad for the founders. I'm completely bearish on that generation of startup. I think they were born too early before everything we learned with Claude Cowork and Claude Code and all these things that have come out over the last several months. So I'm like much more bullish on companies being born today or being born a few months ago in kind of the agentic era than I am on people who are born during the short-lived generative AI era, which I think also makes it complicated.
Well, hopefully they were able to pivot, right? And
let's hope, yeah.
They're in early.
But don't you think you might say that in a year? You might look back.
This is why investing is so. Yes, this is why investing is so hard right now. That's exactly right. It's like the agents that these people are building. I have no clue if their shelf life is 3 weeks, 3 months, 3 years, or 3 decades. Like, well, it's probably not 3 decades. But it's hard to know, and that's why I think investing in venture is really hard, and that's why I think we've seen a slowdown. I mean, I'm friends with most of the investors in our space. Like all of us have cut fewer checks this year than last year because of exactly what you just said.
I had one.
Yeah, I feel like Code recently is actually building. Yesterday, I noticed this a little bit. It actually just built features. I didn't ask for it. It just decided this would be a sentence, and it was. So you imagine in 6 months.
And there's this big question today of how good no code will get. Because today, it's true that no code cannot build you Expedia with all the bells and whistles. But that's today. Like what happens in a month and 2 months and 6 months. And again, that's what makes it so hard to be a founder and so hard to be a venture investor. I will say, I think there's an endless opportunity to build small and medium businesses. I think that we are going to a golden era where, like I think I said this earlier, the advantages that big business had over small business are largely waning. Whereas the advantages the small business have over big business, like local, personal relationship, et cetera, are growing in dominance.
What's a small business and a medium business revenue, annual revenue wise? And EBITDA. What do you call that?
Great question. I think anything under $100 million in top line is considered probably a medium business. I'm talking about global size business. I'm not talking about, this is what's hard, right? The Economist from one of my favorite publications.
Sure, I have a definition of SMEs, right, for Arrival.
Yeah, exactly. So the Economist defines small and medium business under 10,000 employees. I define it much smaller than under 10,000 employees. But the thing is, you could still imagine a travel agency that really only has a few dozen employees that is doing $100 million a year in bookings. I mean, not imagine there are those travel agencies.
What's Fora doing a year? You know that because I think.
They publicly said they booked $1 billion. I think in 25 is when they said they booked. Maybe.
Right, but that's not the revenue. So the revenue is 10, 15% of that.
Exactly. It's hard to know what the deals are, but exactly. The average host agency is doing somewhere between a 10 and 30% split. So the agency is getting somewhere between 10 and 30% of the commission on the bookings. And the commission can go between 10 and 20% itself. So people can do the math and figure it out. Now, again, I don't know what agreements Fora has with their advisor. I don't know where they are on the distribution.
But you can't say it's $1 billion revenue.
Correct. Absolutely.
There's a different name for that number. That's like Fair Harbor saying we processed $20 billion.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We have a lot of companies in our space who are like, we have had $20 billion of commerce go through our rails. And I'm like, I have no clue what that could even mean.
What did you even keep? Yeah, right.
So what is an interesting space right now? What would you want to see tomorrow? A company come up to you in Experiences. Yeah. Or let's give you $1 million. You got to start up tomorrow morning, $1 million in Experiences. What are you building?
Yeah. So ultimately, one of the things I'm most excited about is what I call dynamic products. And I should probably call them dynamic packages, but we have destroyed that word by making dynamic packages that are not dynamic for like 20 years. So the idea is, how do you create a product that's for an N of one? How can every itinerary and every product that your company sells be completely catered and customized to me? So I'll give you the short anecdote that I always use to illustrate this. There are 3 innovations that have happened in our industry over the last decade or so that enable this vision I have for dynamic products. Number 1 is the huge proliferation in the diversity of hard product. So the 2 examples I always use is Lufthansa's business class, where most of our audience probably are familiar. Lufthansa released a new business class about 1.5 years ago. There are 14 seats per subcabin with 6 different configurations: a privacy chair, a couple's chair, a family chair, a platonic couple's chair, different experience on the same plane. The other example I use is Marriott. When I started in this industry 15 years ago, Marriott had roughly 8 or 9 hotel brands. So they have got 35, 37, whatever the number they have is. Each of these brands is catering to a slightly different customer and a slightly different use case. And that can go on and on. In wellness and luxury and culinary, we've had a huge proliferation in the inventory we offer. Second innovation is dropship. Amazon Prime, Uber Eats, etc. can get you a specific product anywhere in the world at any time throughout the day to enhance your journey. And of course, the last innovation is AI-powered storytelling. So let's put those all together. I've got a 6-year-old daughter.
You had me till the end there.
The AI storytelling? Well, let me show you how the AI storytelling helps. So we'll put it all together. Let's say that I went to one of your tour companies or to an OTA or to whoever who sold me a truly dynamic product. And I want to take my family to Paris. When the van came out here to the driver to pick me up, the itinerary would have been turned into a video about all the fun things we're about to do in Paris and all the princesses they're going to run across. When I got to the airport, I didn't have just 4 seats together. I had the right 4 seats with my kids so we could watch a movie together in Lufthansa. When I got to Paris, I had the right hotel selected from the huge proliferation. I got upstairs, Amazon Prime dropped off princess toys for the bath. And the hotel put them in the bathroom so my daughter can have a nice transition from the long flight into her vacation in Paris. The next morning, the tour guide came to pick us up for the history tour. And AI sent him a bunch of fairy tale stories about Parisian princesses in the past that he could incorporate into the walking tour so my kids are not bored as we're doing the tour through Paris. And it happens to be that my wife is gluten-free, and you probably know that very few Parisian bakeries offer gluten-free choices. So at the end of the food tour, Uber Eats dropped off a box of gluten-free cookies so my wife could also enjoy a Parisian dessert. Now, I can go on and on, but I'm sure you get where I'm going with this. In this whole long story I just told you, there's only 2 pieces of hard product that I introduced, of cost I introduced. It was gluten-free cookies and princess toys that were dropped off at the hotel. Let's call those $15 and $15, even though that's a lot of money for gluten-free cookies, but whatever. So I just increased the cost of the trip by $30. How much more is the customer willing to pay for that trip? Is it $100? Is it $300? Is it $700? I frankly think in a premium or luxury setting, it's probably more than that. So what I'm looking for is I'm looking for AI to create win-win-win outcomes. I want better trips for travelers. I want increased margin for the people selling travel products. And I want to reduce the negative impacts of tourism, like over tourism, et cetera, by spreading the value of tourism economics to many more places around the world. That's a company that I want to invest in. Now, the vision I'm telling you now is a big kind of futuristic vision. There's a lot of small steps to get there. So I would potentially be interested in looking at a digital concierge model where, again, the question is how can they make it differentiated? And that's a hard question for the founders to answer, but we have lots of smart founders in our industry, where when you leave the lobby of a hotel, how does the hotel, or when you fly the trip, how does the travel agency's brand stay with you? How do I remember that you're enabling all these little things? So I'm interested in digital concierges. I'm interested in personalized amenities. So I helped the Win Encore create a personalized amenities program where instead of giving me the random bottle of wine that I'm probably not going to drink by myself in the room anyways, what if they can give me a pass to go use the hot tub in the spa or take me to a chocolate making class, or things that are going to be much cheaper for them, but much more meaningful to me. So anything in this era where you turn any user into feeling like it's their only user is a big area. And since I'm going too long, I'll just give you one other one. I'm all about back of house. I want AI in the back office, in the laundry room, in the back hallway. I want it in the planning of the itinerary, so the humans can do hospitality. Right. So these are two things.
Okay.
I hate most of that, Bruce.
What, you said you hate most of that?
Yeah, I really dislike most of that.
There was one thing that I'll comment on. One positive is during the Boken Launchpad a week or two ago, it was a really cool event. It was for startup operators. One of them was a food tour company in Paris, specifically for gluten-free people. So she's doing it. She's super cool. If you really are going to go to Paris with your wife and need gluten-free rec, let me know. And
you see, this is one of those anti-AI businesses that can be very successful. Obviously,
but you need an AI
marketing.
Search, whether it's AI or Google, I don't care. Like, gluten-free food tour in Paris. It's as easy as that. But what you really just described is two of the words that, when put together, do kind of put shivers down my spine. Connected trip. Because isn't that what you're talking about? Is a personalized connected trip. We've been hearing about that for...
Yeah, well, I'll tell you this. When we talk about the connected trip, I think Christian and I have talked about this before as well. I became a huge pessimist in kind of 18, 19, 20, that we were just never going to get there. And the line I used was, we have all the technology we need to create a connected trip infrastructure. We don't have the business incentives to do so. And the way I would say it is, how do you get businesses that are sometimes partners, sometimes competitors, to cooperate for the benefit of the traveler? And unfortunately, that was a hard question to answer. I have rediscovered my optimism around the connected trip because of agentic AI. And because all of a sudden, the business incentive problem goes away. Not only will all these businesses have AI agents, but I will also have my own AI agents. And all of a sudden, let's say I book a trip that has a Four Seasons, a Rosewood, and an Amman, to make it a luxury example, across 3 different cities. All of a sudden, I don't need Four Seasons and Rosewood to agree to share data, because my AI agent will be part of the conversation. So when I book this trip, my restaurant recommendation agent that I use for my restaurant recommendations across my life will go huddle with the concierge agent, with whoever that's coming from these companies, with the DMC, with the tour guide, with the transportation provider, with your travel advisor, whoever is a part of this ecosystem. And together they'll say, hey, here's the restaurants that, the George Sank in Paris likes to recommend based on our experience. And then my thing can say, Gilad's wife doesn't eat pork, and Gilad really likes this and that. And there could be a weather bot that says, the weather's going to be beautiful, Gilad will prefer outdoor seating. And together they can come up with this amazing dinner recommendation. And then when I go to the Rosewood, I don't need any of the Four Seasons bots to go with me. Just my restaurant bot goes and says, guess what? Gilad loved that thing in Paris.
And that's like, you were on, Christian, I think it was almost 2 years ago now, when we had Andy Moss, the CEO of Mindtrip, and we were talking about the connected trip. And that he really struck me when he said, the connected trip is the customer. Once the customer is in the center of the connected trip, it doesn't matter who's doing the flight, the hotel.
I think the greatest mistake we made as an industry was that the GDS was born with the itinerary record at the core, not the traveler profile. Imagine, and I don't blame them. That's what money was.
If you don't have a PNR, then whatever, right?
Exactly. And again, and I don't blame anyone for this. these are all for-profit enterprises, and they all have to find a way to be self-sufficient. It's the same mistake you can say about the web itself, that the core of the web is the ad pixel, not the asset ownership element, which is why we have this whole Web3 craze, because you can own things digitally. So the thing is, we made that mistake. Now, if we had an industry where instead of a PNR, it was a traveler profile with all my preferences, all my past bookings, all that kind of thing at the beginning, connect the trip would be easy, personalization would be easy, dynamic packaging would be easy. But that's not the reality that we have. Now, of course, people like Spotnana thought they were going to kind of reinvent the industry with the kind of profile in the center. And it's a vision that I wish came to fruition, but at least so far has not. I think that's the core sin, is that we have the inventory record at the core, not the travel personalization at the core.
Yeah. So, Christian, after Gilad's last thing, you said you disagreed with everything he said. So I want
everything.
Well, almost. So go ahead, disagree with what he was talking about then, but also he just introduced the idea of the centralized profile, which I know there's organizations working on, right? I've heard, like, Bainbridge.
Let's not start with that. That's not
okay. I thought that was because it was related to hotel connectivity, blah, blah, blah.
Blockchain to solve this.
Well, first of all, go back and critique what we heard, because every time Gilad speaks, it sounds like he's always right? So
I'm far from always right.
I know, I'm just saying the way you speak it, you're very confident, you have all the knowledge. It's like it's easy to, oh yeah, that makes sense. So I would like Christian to critique it.
Well, the first thing that winds me up is the Marriott 57 brand. I remember going to Expedia conference, and they would always say we've got 57 brands and they're each very unique and special and different. I'm like, that's complete BS, right? Expedia had Expedia.com hotels, which were kind of the same. Hotwire, which is different, fine.
Yeah.
And then 54 other ones which we couldn't differentiate.
Oh, you skipped
Marriott.
They had Orbitz and Travelocity.
Yeah, they're exactly the same, right?
Right.
Same with Marriott. I can't find one person on the street who can differentiate between more than 3 or 4 of those Marriott brands and put them in the correct order. Maybe everyone who works for Marriott
brands that are specifically Marriott Outdoors brands. And there's like 3 or 4 sub brands under that are designed.
Sure, a handful, but the average person on the street, they might recognize 3 or 4 of them, and they got no idea where they sit on the luxury or whatever. They might have a rough idea, but there's not however many brands they've got.
And this is why they need the AI. I mean, I completely agree with that point. It is impossible for a consumer to differentiate between the brands. But this is where they're trying to use AI to help tell a story that this one is dog friendly and this one is for older kids or whatever the hell the story is.
Yeah. But so the bit, and maybe because it sounds like Alex Bainbridge on this ultra personalization. First of all, I don't like it. I don't think people want ultra. I think everyone says they want it, but nobody knows what personalization is. They just want what they want. Of course, I want the beer that I want, and everyone thinks that's what it means. But I don't want to arrive to every place I stay and be handed fresh squeezed IPA every time I get somewhere. I'm like, no, I'm in.
Well, you're in Romania. So my friends at there's a podcast, I think it's called the Experience.Strategy podcast or whatever. It's Joe Pine and Arancis Savas and their third partner, who I should know, Dave Norton. They all came to the Executive Summit last year at Arrive on DC, so you might remember them. And they talk about modes more than personas or personalization, because we're in a different mode right now than we might be. Yeah, when you land in London and you want a beer, or are you with your family, or are you with your son?
Absolutely
right. But go ahead, Chris. That's
so there's the persona problem, obviously, but I also don't want my trip ultra optimized, right? I think travel is, and I kind of argue both sides of this sometimes. I like optimization so you don't waste time and you don't book stupid stuff. But I think this ultra optimization to get the exact perfect thing on the right day at the right time, I think you take away all the uncertainty, which I think destroys it a little bit. If I'm checking into the hotel and the pillow's on the right side of the bed and the exact same bottle of wine every time I go, and I'm getting the same exact restaurant every time with the same, you just take all the uncertainty out of the travel. I also really dislike this private. All right, I'm from sightseeing. I'm from the extreme of hop on, hop off, where we load lots of people on buses. But I think tourism is about being social as well. So I don't think people have these ultra personalized wishes in Rome. I think people go to Rome and they're happy for the tour guide to say, let me show you what Rome's about. I'm not going to come along and say, I need to see these 10 places. I want the tour guide to show me. The group
so
versus private, that's personal choice maybe.
I think all that's right. And again, an AI that's calibrated correctly can address that, right? So one of the inputs we took at UTrip was how spontaneous are you? And for people who are very spontaneous, it became more of a list of things you should consider. And for people who are less spontaneous, it became an hour-by-hour itinerary. And same thing, one of the questions was, how authentically local do you want to be? Do you like your kind of wine? You drink the same wine everywhere? Or do you like to drink local wine when you go places? So I think the AI can account for some of those. But I think the most important thing you said that I most agree with is the core of travel is a human experience. We travel to have a human experience internally, to connect with other humans, and to connect with human creations like art, like history, like culture, like food. These are all human creations. So I completely agree. And I used to say at UTrip, the AI should meld into the background so the humans could be the things that you focus on, that you feel during trips. And I certainly agree with that fully.
Let's pitch over to trip planning tools, because we kept saying, let's talk about it. We want to talk about it. We don't have a lot more time left on this call. Or I guess I should say this podcast, although it feels like we're just on a call, just hanging out.
We're just chatting.
So
now you're just wasting time, Bruce. You're just waffling. You're wasting time.
So we might need to edit it. But let's start with a question to either of you. How many trip planning tools do you think have come through since UTrip and are now sitting in that famous trip planning tool graveyard? What's the estimate? Let's say
300. I mean, there's a total number on my, where, but
yes.
300.
Christian?
Yeah, I wouldn't argue with that. Probably God knows the number, but yeah, I would say in the hundreds, in the
and
low
growing
hundreds.
Since AI.
Oh, I was just exponentially growing. It'll be 3,000 by the next time we do a podcast together.
How many of you been pitched like, hey, I have a trip planning tool and I'm going to focus on just CDBs and what their groups are that come in?
I was pitched one this morning who said they were the first one to ever try to build AI trip planning tools for travel advisors. And I had to tell them that my first travel advising client was in 2014. Right. So
the best advice usually is just don't do it.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you, the nuance on trip planning startups is if you're passionate about it, build it as a small business. Build it as effectively as a small online travel agency, or build it niche for this specific kind of hotel or some kind of tour. Don't ever talk to me or any other VC about your trip planning business, because it can't scale, and none of us believe it can scale. The only reason what's his name from Sonder got the money is because he's what's his name from Sonder. It has nothing to do with the actual idea. So the thing is, like, if you're passionate about it, hell yeah, go build a small business. Make yourself great money. Travel like you're a big deal. But I don't think there's any venture future for any of these companies.
All right, so that's a really negative comment on trip planning tools.
On the investability of trip planning, not on the consumer value.
Now, on our last Experience.This, Christian, you talked to Marius from iWander, who's been going around on this for quite a while. I think it started really not as a trip planning tool, but more as an audio guide. Had a different name as well. And then he recently pivoted over to iWander, got a great contract with City Sightseeing Worldwide, which has over 100 locations. You know Marius quite well. So what's his deal? And would you tell him not to go get investment capital? I don't know if he has raised yet, or
no,
negative on what they're doing, even though he's a friend of yours.
Yeah. No, it's not a trip planner, right? It's still very much an audio guide. It's an on-the-fly created audio guide. So I can land in London, decide I want to do a history tour with Jack the Ripper and these 4 things in this sort of theme, and it's going to take whatever it takes, 30 seconds. It's going to generate a guide.
So it's not meant to be a trip planning tool at all.
No,
how do you monetize?
He doesn't know yet. Potentially, you end up finishing at the Tower of London and sell people a ticket is one obvious thing, right? Potentially, there's lots of views on it, or there's different places you can go.
Or it's a B2B sale. He sells licenses or something.
Definitely B2B is a key part of it. But it starts to look a bit like trip planning, right? But between a trip planner that you do 3 weeks ago or something that I'm doing right now, when I arrive, it's the same concept, really.
So is there any trip planning tool that either of you guys have seen?
And the problem with these on the ground tools, they're even harder to monetize because the easiest thing to monetize is a hotel reservation. It has always been the easiest part to monetize. It's where the biggest commission is going to be. So the problem is, like, I'm pitched all the time about, like, everyone's competing for the first few things. I want to compete in, like, the in destination, and I love it. I agree that I always say we don't travel to sleep in hotels or to be in airplanes. We travel to see, to do, to experience. But the thing is, there's no way to monetize that. You know, when Rich Barton looked at UTrip and he told me it was the best trip plan he'd ever seen and still not going to invest, I said, okay, help me square the circle. Why are you not investing? What's the best one you've ever seen? And he goes, it's awesome. It's just not going to make enough money for me to make a return on my investment because it's too far from the transaction. And that's why ultimately UTrip had to become a B2B2C company, because there wasn't enough revenue to be made in kind of this top of funnel B2C thing, but corporates are willing to pay for the technology. So the thing is, the on the ground thing is awesome.
You're competing on the ground with Viator and Get Your Guide. And oh, by the way, you're getting your product from Viator and Get Your Guide.
100%.
So,
but you can do that. But I think the hardest thing is you're competing with Google, right, on the ground.
Well, yes.
Google Maps. Yeah. Google Maps is obviously the best.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Google goes where?
Yeah. And again, outside of lodging, if we're talking about the money, outside of luxury, most people are spending significantly more money on lodging than they are on tours in their trip. So even if somehow I monetized all the tours that you were taking on the ground, that is still going to be a tiny piece compared to, I could just sell you that hotel reservation in London.
You could have that same argument with Get Your Guide, and they're $1 billion company. So yeah.
It's true. Yeah, it's true.
But it took them a while and scale.
It took them, I mean, and the thing is, they're an aggregator, right? So at the end of the day, like, that's a very different business. They're a marketplace, right? Get Your Guide is Expedia. It's just in the activity space. Yeah. Whereas these guys are trying to become more like agencies or DMCs. And again, there are examples of large agencies. Like Fora is becoming very big. Abercrombie and Kent is quite large. But that's the exception, not the rule. Most of these businesses end up being
a travel agency and a tour operator that you just named. But we're talking about trip planning tools.
No, yeah. But absolutely. My point is, like, most of these trip planning tools end up looking like agencies, whether it's travel agencies or tour providers. And my point is, yes, we can point to one or two that have become very big, but that's the exception, not the rule. Most agencies stay small. Most tour providers stay small. Most DMCs stay small. So it's one of those things that, like, yes, like, there are examples, but at the end of the day, these are businesses that are largely small businesses.
Yeah. Small meaning.
Yeah, it's a hard path to distribution. Right? It's always down. Well, now that development is zero barrier, it's only distribution that's a problem in all these businesses.
Right.
And if you're on the ground, how do you get distribution on the ground? It's almost at least 3 weeks out. You've got Google, you can hand a big check to every day, but on the ground, it's.
And what you're saying is so true, because I make the point to founders all the time. Even if you did build the best trip planner ever built, how does anyone know about it before you got it in their hands? The thing is, it's still a distribution battle. It doesn't matter if you built the best trip planner ever. Plus, even if you did build the best trip planner ever, I can say, hey, Lovable, go copy that guy. He did a good job.
You know, and help me with, like, so I'm driving through northern Spain a couple of weeks ago. Really, you know, we didn't know much. We were in Bilbao and we wanted to get to San Sebastian, but we had to get there from Valencia to get down to, and we had some extra days. Where should we stop? Just ask Claude. And Claude gave me a number of ideas of where to stop. And we looked at it on a map and we decided, let's stop here. Is Claude my trip planning tool? Like,
again, if you want to get into the nuance, if we're going to get into the nuance of trip planning, Claude is your trip ideation tool, and Claude is a killer trip ideation tool. That's the thing. It's like, people sometimes tell me in the space that no one uses the LLMs to plan a trip. And I said, if you mean to book a trip, then I think that's largely accurate today, but it depends on what you mean when you say the word plan, because I said the same thing within travel agencies. Even your customers who love you, are loyal to you, are going to use your travel agency for many years to come. They're still going to ChatGPT. They're still going to Claude before they come to your meeting. So that's the thing. Like, these are critical parts of discovery, like you said, even though today it's not booking.
But it's really close to 75 to 80% of the US and Europe last year during discovery used ChatGPT, Claude, whatever. That's 75 to 80%. 2 years ago, it was 0%. And and you see all these people with
stories. I don't care what they say. It's so I use ChatGPT mainly just out of habit, but it's just so good. I was just in Transnistria, which 99% of people have never heard of. It's not even a real country, and it just nailed it. It just tells me where to go and this and that, and go and see this. You can't even find that. You can't search it. There's no websites. It's so good if you know when it's going to fail.
And can I tell you one of my favorite?
Go ahead.
Sorry. One of my favorite use cases like that. So when I go into a city or a country to give a speech, often I get there midday and I've got open until dinner, whenever like the speaker dinner is or whatever. What I do is I start walking in direction. I open ChatGPT. I take a photo of the first landmark I see. So tell me about this. And then you know me, like history and culture and blah, blah, blah. Where should I go next? And this is take a left and go to this thing. You might see that building. And again, is it as good as a tour guide? Of course not. A human tour guide would be way better. But I'm usually not hiring a human tour guide for like the 3 hours I've got open in the afternoon on a Tuesday. And the ChatGPT does a killer job on that.
So why, because what I always have not liked about trip planning tools is, okay, here's what you should do on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. I'm like, no. I'm driving right now between here and here, and it's this time of day. And okay, well, you know what? It's lunchtime. Where should we go for lunch? ChatGPT or Claude? I don't need a tool to tell me that. I got it.
And as both of you and Christian said, the serendipity of travel is half the fun. That discovering that little town, discovering that little restaurant, that meeting that person, texting them a music show, like that is half the fun on travel. So the thing is, when people are building these trip planners, you have to really think about how do you not get rid of that serendipity, which is at the core of what we love about travel.
I got like the town we discovered on our way back to Valencia. I'll have to come up with the name, show a picture. Was unfucking believable, right?
Yeah.
And ChatGPT, we were using Claude, said, oh, you can go here or here. It didn't say you have to go here and here's why.
Yeah.
But what other trip planning tools would even have put that out? Is you have to go here. Here's why. Are there
I just had a fail yesterday. I was looking for lunch yesterday, and I went with ChatGPT, and it sent me to a local place. And I sat down, and it was fine, but it had 18,000 reviews, which you think is either excellent or they're really good at getting reviews. And it was pretty much gun to my head to give them a review. It's like, have you finished it yet? Have you written it? Have you posted it before I got the bill? I'm like, This is why they've got 18,000 reviews, which is why ChatGPT knows about it. So you can hack it, but...
You can hack it. And the thing is, and it's still important to verify. Travel advisors are still important. Concierge or tour guides are still important. The story that I love, I was giving a speech in Seoul in Korea a few months ago, and they've got a new AI and robotics museum. So I figured as the AI speaker, I should go see the AI robotics museum. And AI gave me the recommendation, gave me the hours, gave me whatever, gave me everything was correct. I showed up. It just didn't tell me that they only did guided tours and that you had to have a guided tour, even though the hours of operations were open all day. Now, I got lucky and I had a human who was able to squeeze me into a tour that was starting 20 minutes later. But the AI forgot that detail, and that detail happened to be the critical detail that makes the experience work.
Yeah, which as an industry we're still short on, right? Because we haven't, they should have published that.
They should have.
Didn't. It's
the same thing. The example I use with hotels is adjoining rooms. I say, if you did all the hard work of building adjoining rooms and you have no content for the AI to know about it, it will not recommend your hotel when I say I need adjoining rooms with my kids.
Yeah.
And that's the content challenge that everyone's in, is like creating content for things that they never thought they needed to have content for before, but the AI is recommending at that level of depth. So we all have to think about, what do we need to be exposing to the AI so it really understands the unique particularities of our businesses?
Yeah. I don't think we're going to have enough time to talk about Roman legions and Jack Dorsey, but I think actually we talked about the Jack Dorsey essay on the last or 2 episodes ago, but we should have a follow-up on that, Gilad, because I could talk about that all day.
Absolutely. And really, one of the things I say in all my speeches at the end is artificial intelligence is not an IT project. It's a project for the CEO and for the board. It's a re-architecting of our organizations. It's a re-architecting of how we work. And it's a re-architecting of how value is created. And I think what you're referring to there with the Jack Dorsey essay is something really thoughtful. I encourage our listeners to read. It doesn't take very long to read it, just to be able to imagine one possible future of what an organization might look like once AI is really deployed across the organization. And I think it's a future we should be excited about.
Well,
Bruce, have we got time for quick fire?
We can be excited about real quick. This is the town I'm talking about.
Oh, wow.
Pretty much the whole thing.
Beautiful.
Obviously, well, there are some cars, but tourists can't bring cars in. There's a parking lot, and then you walk in.
Spain's just full of like amazing stuff like that, isn't it? And they're not well known.
It
You
is.
just sort of across them, and it's amazing.
Yeah. So I think we need
quick fire. Gilad, we need three best countries you've been to. You define best however you like, and then the three countries that you most want to visit that you haven't been to yet.
Okay, so there's some recency bias here, but I just went to Morocco for the first time and just fell in love with Morocco. I'm not going to open that can of worms because we need another hour for me to talk about how much I love Morocco, but that was high on the list. Another new one for me is New Zealand. I got to do this incredible trip to New Zealand, and I got to go into like the middle of the Southern Alps, and like honestly haven't felt like I was that in the middle of nowhere in a very, very long time, like that connected to nature. And obviously New Zealand's so incredibly safe, including from like a wild animal perspective, that it's like you feel free to just explore in a way that like, so in Australia, they tell you like everything out there is going to kill you. So you have to be a little more careful. New Zealand was really like that. And then one more, I'll say, I'm a huge fan. I mean, I'm going to say Canada, but to be a little more specific from Canada, I'm a huge fan of Vancouver Island, which is in British Columbia. And it's one of those things where at the bottom, you've got Victoria, which is like this really adorable, romantic little town. But then you have all these little cities like kind of out in nature, and they're Canadian, so they're the most welcoming people ever. So anyway, so I really recommend Vancouver Island, especially this time of year. Now, high on my list, the number one I've never been to is Brazil. I'm dying to go to Brazil. I've never been, and it's high on my list. I've been to Mexico, but I've never been to Mexico City. And I'm told it's a crime, and I'm desperate to go to Mexico City. And then I have never been to Singapore, and I'm actually going to go to Singapore for the first time in a few months. So I very much look forward to that.
Excellent.
Awesome. Yep.
Good choices.
This was great. Thanks, Gilad. Really appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Definitely. Really appreciate it. Good to see you again. We haven't seen each other in a little bit.
Yeah.
Are you going
I'll
to
see
in Barcelona?
I am not, but I was going to say I will see you in Spokane, Washington, which I'm sure our audience does not know is where I went to high school. So when I was at Arrival last year, you guys announced Spokane as the next city. I literally thought you were playing a joke on me. Like something about like my parents still live there or whatever. And then I saw it on the big screen. I was like, okay, they can't be doing this whole thing just for me. So I'll see you in Spokane.
So when people ask me, why are you guys going to Spokane? I can say, because Gilad went to high school there. And
if you want my mother to cook you some delicious Israeli food, she'd be thrilled to have you over and talk your ear off.
Awesome. Well, we'll see you there. We'll talk ahead of time about ideas and plans. We should do that sooner than later.
Absolutely.
And Christian, I'll see you in Brisbane in about 10 days or so.
Yeah, it's coming up. It is 10 days exactly.
Super fast.
And also coming up in just over an hour is the World Cup.
The first game?
Yep.
Which is very exciting.
I'm going to find a pub to watch the first game.
Who's playing?
Mexico and South Africa.
Okay.
Not the best game, but Mexico is good to watch.
I believe when we're in Brisbane, the U.S. is playing Australia.
Yeah, maybe nobody cares.
England are also playing. It'll still be fun because I know you were bummed at us picking those dates. But
yeah, so we have Belgium and Egypt.
What's that?
I say here in Seattle, we have Belgium and Egypt as our first matchup coming up in a few days, which will be
actually
fun.
In Seattle. So Seattle's
in Seattle. Yeah, we're one of the host cities. Exactly right. So, and as I'm sure you've talked about on the podcast, the tourism numbers have sadly not materialized from most of the host cities, but I'm still quite excited about the World Cup.
You know, I heard someone talking about how in Paris during the Olympics, they got crushed, the tourism numbers.
That always happens. The year of is always terrible. Every Olympics,
it's terrible. And I think one of the things that's happened recently too is the prices for these tickets have become so insane that the average tourist is just not able to access most of these tickets anyways. And then in the United States, the host cities are so far apart. There's not like it's Europe where you can go drive between the cities, take a little train between the cities. So I think we've made it hard on ourselves.
Shocking.
Yeah.
Shocking.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, guys. It's been a great show.
On the show.
Thank you.
Okay. Great. Thanks, Christian. So thanks.